Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Permanent Mission of Pakistan and Consular Journal of Pakistan, it is my honor to welcome you all to this important side event on Leaving No One Behind, Social Development Challenges in Conflict-Affected and Occupied Territories. We gathered today within the framework of 64th session on Commission on Social Development, a platform that calls upon international community to advance social justice through inclusive and equitable policies. Yet, as we speak of inclusion, we must pause and confront an uncomfortable truth. Across continents, from long prolonged occupations to forgotten conflict zones, millions of people remain structurally excluded from the promise of social development. For them, leaving no one behind is not a slogan. It is an unfulfilled promise. Today, to help us reflect on this issue, we are honored to have a distinguished panel of speakers. It is my honor to invite our keynote speaker, Permanent Representative of Pakistan to the United Nations, Ambassador Asim Iftikhar Ahmed, for his keynote remarks. Ambassadors, you have the floor.
Thank you, Excellencies, Ambassadors, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you all for your very kind presence in this meeting. Allow me to begin by recalling the political declaration adopted at the Second World Summit on Social Development in Doha last November. That declaration reaffirmed a fundamental truth that social development and social justice cannot be ensured without peace, dignity, and inclusion. It recognized that development cannot take root where societies are fractured by violence, conflict, and prolonged insecurity. And above all, it committed us to a shared responsibility to focus our efforts on those who are farthest behind, including communities living in conflict-affected and occupied territories. So, mired against that commitment, today's discussion acquires a particular sense of urgency because across continents, millions of people live under the shadow of conflict, occupation, and instability. For them, social development is not just an abstract policy goal. It's a daily struggle because schools are disrupted, healthcare systems are strained or destroyed, livelihoods collapsed, and social cohesion eroded. Children grow up amid fear rather than opportunity, and women shoulder disproportionate burdens of deprivation and are subjected to sexual violence, and entire generations inherit trauma instead of hope. These realities remind us that conflict not only results in humanitarian crises, it poses one of the most profound structural barriers to social development and social justice. Today also marks, ladies and gentlemen, Kashmir Solidarity Day, a day of deep significance for the people of Kashmir and Pakistan. On this day, we reaffirm our unwavering solidarity with the people of Jammu and Kashmir and renew our determination to ensure that their suffering and sacrifice are remembered and are also renew our pledge to support their just struggle for self-determination and freedom from occupation. We are reminded that behind every statistic lies a human story of mothers waiting for sons who never returned, of children growing up amid fear rather than freedom, and of a people whose everyday life is shaped not by free choice, but by subjugation. For the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, occupation is a permanent condition lasting more than 7 decades that affects every facet of their daily lives: education, employment, mobility, expression, and hope itself. Their lived reality is one of interrupted childhoods, constrained aspirations, and a future held hostage by uncertainty. To speak of social development in such circumstances is to confront a painful truth. When dignity is denied and voices are silenced, development becomes an illusion rather than a promise. Ladies and gentlemen, with the presence of nearly 900,000 Indian occupation forces in Jammu and Kashmir, civilian life has been subjected to extraordinary militarization. Enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings, arbitrary detentions, and pervasive impunity have left families fractured and communities traumatized. These practices have inflicted deep psychological scars, eroded trust, and damaged the social fabric of the Kashmiri society. The situation has deteriorated further since India's unilateral and illegal actions of 5th August 2019, which sought to consolidate India's illegal occupation of Jammu and Kashmir. These actions were accompanied by sweeping measures that have dramatically shrunk the civic space. Independent media has been silenced, civil society organizations constrained, peaceful assembly has been criminalized, and freedom of religion denied, and political participation has been curtailed. Journalists, human rights defenders, academics, community leaders operate under constant threat, while ordinary citizens face surveillance and reprisals for exercising their basic freedoms. The erosion of civic space has deepened mistrust, compounded the trauma, and stripped the Kashmiri society of civil liberties. And the impact is visible across key pillars of social development, because that's what we are focusing. Education has been repeatedly disrupted by prolonged lockdowns. School closures and communication blackouts are there. One of the highest internet shutdowns in the world have denied students access to learning, isolated young people from opportunity, and severed their connection to the outside world. Healthcare has been similarly constrained with restrictions on movement, delaying emergency care, interrupting the supply of essential medicines, and exacerbating an already severe mental health crisis, particularly among women and children. Economic life has not been spared either. Prolonged curfews and instability have devastated livelihoods, crippling tourism, agriculture, handicrafts, and small businesses, the traditional foundations of economic self-reliance in Kashmir. Youth unemployment has surged, deepening poverty and eroding prospects for a dignified future. In such an environment, social development cannot be sustained, and social justice remains beyond reach. Ladies and gentlemen, the people of Palestine continue to endure similar grave social and humanitarian consequences arising from prolonged occupation, recurrent violence, displacement, and the destruction of entire civilian infrastructure, such as in Gaza. The denial of education, healthcare, housing, and livelihoods has entrenched cycles of vulnerability and despair, with women and children bearing the heaviest costs. Their experience, like that of the Kashmiri people, underscores the devastating impact of occupation on human dignity and social progress. For the peoples of Kashmir and Palestine, therefore, social development and social justice cannot be fully realized without the realization of their inalienable right to self-determination, as enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations, as affirmed in the two key covenants on human rights and several UN Security Council resolutions. If the international community is serious about leaving no one behind, then our social development agenda must confront these stark realities honestly and consistently. The commitments made in Doha on inclusion, access to essential services, social protection, dignity, and international cooperation must apply equally to those under occupation, because they cannot be deferred, diluted, or selectively applied. So let us reaffirm clearly and collectively that the people of conflict-affected and occupied territories will not be rendered invisible in our pursuit of progress. Leaving no one behind must mean no exceptions, no selectivity, and no silence. I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to a substantive and forward-looking discussion in the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Asim, for insightful and thought-provoking keynote remarks and for setting the stage for our panel discussion. We'll begin our panel discussion. Our first panelist is Ambassador Ahmet Yildiz, Permanent Representative of Turkey and Chair of OIC CFM. Ambassador Ahmet, what measures are required to operationalize commitments from Doha Political Declaration for advancing social development for people facing conflict situations and foreign occupation? You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I commend first Permanent Mission of Pakistan for organizing this event and inviting me as panelist. As Ambassador Asim mentioned, conflicts are growing more complex, and conflict-related territories face profound social development challenges that can reverse decades of progress in a matter of months, as we have witnessed in Iraq. Essential systems such as healthcare, education, water, sanitation, and social protection often collapse or operate at minimal capacity, leaving communities without even basic services. Civilians bear the brunt of this breakdown, with particularly vulnerable groups, including children, women, elderly, disabled, and displaced populations. They are disproportionately impacted by disrupted schooling, loss of livelihoods, food insecurity, heightened security risks. Social cohesion also erodes as displacement, trauma, and weakened institutions strain community networks. As a result, development prospects are undermined. Hard-won gains in poverty reduction, public health, and human capital development are not only stalled, but frequently erased, making recovery longer, more complex, and more costly. Jammu and Kashmir is one of the examples for conflict-related regions where almost 8 decades of dispute left a huge social development challenge for Kashmiri people. Prolonged tensions, ongoing human rights violations, economic hardships, and infrastructural deficiencies are further deepening the humanitarian dimension of the problem. As we observe Kashmir Solidarity Day today, we would like to emphasize that the expectations of Kashmiris must be fulfilled for a lasting peace. The resolution of the Kashmir issue is vital for ensuring social and economic development in Kashmir. We should advocate a fair and lasting resolution for the Kashmir issue in line with the UN Charter and relevant UN resolutions that would restore peace and stability in the region through dialogue between the parties. Achieving peace and development in Jammu and Kashmir will at the same time contribute to the overall prosperity and sustainable development in Southeast Asia and beyond. Dear colleagues, we cannot talk about the devastating consequences of conflict and prolonged occupation on social development without referring to Palestine. Palestinians are a nation stripped from their inalienable rights and forced to live under occupation. Their land is occupied, natural resources are exploited, their access to essential services are systematically disrupted. Restrictions imposed by the occupying power on land, water, energy, and other natural resources deprive the Palestinian people of the ability to develop a sustainable economy and entrench dependency on external assistance. Restrictions on movement, recurrent violence, settler abuses, settler violence, and destruction of civilian infrastructure erode social development. In Gaza, 2 years of brutal war left the entire region demolished and people with very little resources to build a future. In the West Bank, Palestinians live under constant threat of expanding illegal settlements, settler violence, forced displacement. Yet, the occupying power still does not allow full and unimpeded humanitarian access. Israel continues to unlawfully obstruct the ability of the UN and international humanitarian organizations, particularly UNRWA, to operate safely and effectively, undermining the provision of life-saving assistance. Without ending the conflict and the occupation, social development prospect is not attainable in Palestine. Occupation and conflict will continue to hinder social development and social justice in the neighboring countries where Palestinian refugees seek shelter. In Syria, over more than a decade of conflict, west areas of Syrian cities have been devastated with the near total destruction of residential neighborhoods in many locations. The economy has contracted to less than half of its 2010 level. Nearly 2 million children remain outside the education system. Unemployment has reached alarmingly high levels. Agricultural sector has shrunk significantly, and serious deficiencies have emerged in infrastructure, particularly in electricity and water. In the period following the revolution in Syria, the removal of sanctions was a necessary prerequisite to unlock economic recovery and social development, and meaningful progress has been achieved in this regard. Throughout this process, Turkey has been providing support to the Syrian side across a range of areas, in particular for the rapid repair and reconstruction of critical infrastructure. However, the current situation in Syria cannot be addressed by Syrians alone, nor through the efforts of only a handful of countries. The social and economic challenges facing the country can be overcome through the sustained and collective support of the international community. Dear colleagues, adopted at the Second World Summit for Social Development, the Doha Political Declaration reinforces our shared commitment to social justice and leaving no one behind. The principle of leaving no one behind reflects Turkey's long-standing state tradition in social assistance, firmly rooted in equality, dignity, and inclusion. This approach extends beyond Turkish citizens. Turkey hosts one of the largest refugee populations in the world, currently providing protection over 2.5 million Syrians. Once the number had reached 5 million, and alongside approximately 200,000 international protection applicants and status holders. At its peak, as I said, the number approached 5 million, making Turkey the largest refugee hosting country globally. Turkey has also extended support to Syrians internally displaced within the country. Guided by the principle of leaving no one behind, we demonstrated a strong and enduring commitment to safeguarding the rights and well-being of forcibly displaced persons, with particular attention to vulnerable groups, notably women and children. Over the past 14 years, we hosted, as I said, millions of Syrians and ensured their access to basic rights and essential services. Through comprehensive policies in health, education, and social cohesion, as well as the establishment of temporary accommodation centers, Turkey has provided safe and dignified living conditions, and the cumulative cost of these efforts is estimated around 60 billion US dollars. In this context, strengthening access to national social protection system for people affected by the conflict and displacement is essential. In Turkey, social assistance and solidarity foundations and social service centers play a central role in reaching both citizens and Syrians and others under temporary protection, enabling integrated case management, referrals, and community-level social cohesion. Turkey operates an integrated social assistance system that brings together cash and in-kind support, social services, and psychological assistance within a single digital framework. Integrated social registries enabled rapid, targeted, and needs-based assistance, help prevent duplication, and ensure timely support for those most at risk. By linking cash assistance with referrals to education, health, and care services, this approach not only addresses immediate needs, but also strengthens household resilience and long-term social cohesion in crisis settings. Dear colleagues, social protection is particularly important for those affected by conflict, occupation, and displacement. In this respect, leaving no one behind is not only a human rights imperative, but also a key driver of sustainable development, social justice, and social cohesion. Dear colleagues, of course, I may not be able to truly depict this Turkish system. It was catalyzed by the Syrian immigrant refugee population. But for those who closely follow, it is one of the best or the best till now. And it is worth to research about it, because without seeing in the field, you cannot realize how it changed the social protection for foreigners. So I advise everybody, all who are expert on this, to follow. Of course, Ambassador Asim and I focused only on Kashmir, Syria, and Palestine. But I am aware there are other conflict-related regions, population, people in Ukraine and other parts of the world. We don't forget them. But just to make an analysis by examples, I just focused on 3 which is very close to us. Of course, we shouldn't forget the other regions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, for sharing your insights and the humanitarian assistance and social protection provided by Turkey to millions. Our next speaker is Ambassador Hamid Opileru, Permanent Representative for the OIC Observer Mission to the United Nations. Ambassador, how can international cooperation and humanitarian assistance be strengthened to support inclusive social development for people living in conflict situations and occupied territories, and what role OIC can play in this regard? You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Your Excellency, for inviting me to this event, and Your Excellency's distinguished participants. There's no doubt that the theme of today's event is very topical, coming immediately after the Second World Summit for Social Development held in Doha, Qatar, from 4-6 November 2025, and the ongoing démarche for the elaboration of a 5-year plan of action in this regard. Permit me to recall that the three major thrusts of the Doha Political Declaration on social development are poverty eradication, promotion of full and productive employment and decent work for all, as well as social integration. Closely related to the above people-oriented development paradigm is the global efforts for realizing sustainable development goals, which is 5 years from its expiration. These goals have emphasized the nexus between peace, security, and development, including the strong linkages among all the goals. So under the slogan, "Leaving no one behind," the international community has identified promotion of socio and solidarity economy as a veritable means of addressing the impact of the ever-increasing political crises and war situation on the vulnerable segments of the world population. Based on the interconnection between peace and social development, the United Nations agenda on peace and security has been robust and multifarious. While the number of active war zones and conflict areas under the UN agenda in 2024-2025 is estimated at between 56 to 61. The number of UN peacekeepers also stands at 61,000 across 11 missions worldwide. So the major active conflict situations and flashpoints include Ukraine, Gaza, Israel, Palestine, Sudan, Yemen, Myanmar, India, Pakistan in South Asia, USA, Israel, Iran in Middle East, and the conflicts in parts of Africa, among others. Statistically, the cost of global warfare and violence stood at $19.1 trillion in 2024, which surpassed the funding gap of between 14 to 17 trillion needed for the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals in 2024. It is apparent that the opportunity cost of attaining SDG is the amount spent on warfare and violence, hence the need for a multi-track approach to peace building and peacemaking for enduring and sustainable global peace and prosperity. In addressing conflict prevention, management, and resolution, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, as a regional organization, collaborates with the United Nations on the major conflicts in Middle East, including Gaza, Palestine, Yemen, Sudan, Syria and Iran, Afghanistan, South Asia, Africa, as well as the question of the Rohingya minority people of Myanmar. It has been proven that more than 60% of interstate and intrastate crises on the agenda of United Nations belong to OIC member countries. In line with the Doha Political Declaration, the OIC has continued to give priority to addressing the root causes of conflicts through such conflict prevention measures as protection of women, the aged, youth, children, and persons with disability, particularly during armed conflict, as well as promoting intercultural and interreligious dialogue and humanitarian relief. Other measures include combating Islamophobia and religious intolerance, addressing the spate of arms, drugs, and human trafficking, violent extremism, as well as promoting social justice and the rights of minority groups, as well as peoples under colonial domination. In specific terms, the OIC has always adopted measures aimed at promoting the culture of peace and conflict prevention, management, and resolution, while prioritizing mediation and diplomacy. It is apparent that war and conflicts pose greater challenges to socioeconomic development. In terms of social impacts, war situations greatly affect women, youth, and children. It disrupts their means of livelihood, employment, and educational opportunities, and leads to decrease in trade and economic activities, thereby deepening poverty and destitution among the generality of population. Consequently, and in addition to its poverty alleviation strategies, the OIC maintains a strong peace-building support architecture. This is evident in the mandate of its contact groups on Palestine, Muslims in Europe, Rohingya, Jammu, Kashmir, and Afghanistan. This is in addition to the implementation of the various ministerial resolutions on peace-building support for the conflict-affected OIC member states and the accompanying programs on socio-economic development, science and technology, and humanitarian and cultural affairs, including measures to prevent Islamophobia and foster global interreligious harmony. So in addition, the OIC supports the peace-building architecture of the United Nations with a good number of its member states being both donors and recipients of the fund's contributions and allocation. On the socio-economic plane, the OIC has been active in the effective implementation of the poverty alleviation programs under the Islamic Solidarity Funds for Development, the Trust Funds of Afghanistan and the Sahel region, the Global Funds for Refugees, the Lives and Livelihood Funds, and its humanitarian funds. On employment generation, wealth creation, and financial inclusion, the popularization of Islamic financial products has led to the exponential growth of Islamic financial products and Islamic social finance and Islamic philanthropy. On institution building, the establishment of the Women Development Organization in Cairo, Egypt, the OIC Labor Center in Baku, Azerbaijan. These are dedicated to scaling up social protection and economic empowerment of women, as well as youth employment and entrepreneurship. In wrapping up, I wish to draw attention to the nexus between peace and security and the successful implementation of the Doha Political Declaration on social development, including attainment of the SDG. I also want to emphasize the urgency of addressing the social development challenges faced by persons living in war-affected countries so as to free resources hitherto expended on wars and violence for bridging the funding gap for the Sustainable Development Goals. And lastly, to underscore that the OIC building and social development efforts aimed at addressing issues bearing on restoration of the inalienable national rights of the Palestinian people, the definitive settlement of the Jammu-Kashmir dispute in accordance with the extant United Nations Security Council resolution, and the restoration of the national rights of the Rohingya people of Myanmar, among other flashpoints in the OIC states. I thank you all.
Thank you, Ambassador, for sharing OIC's extensive efforts for the people of occupied and conflict-affected countries and region. We now turn to our next speaker, Dr. Ghulam Nabi Fai, Chairman, World Forum for Peace and Justice. Dr. Fai, what are the social development challenges faced by people of occupied territories, including such as Jammu and Kashmir, particularly by women, youth, and children? You have the floor.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Madam Chairperson, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. The theme of 64th session of Commission on Social Development. It is very pertinent and very timely indeed, because the theme reminds us that social development cannot be sustained when people face insecurity, instability, and systematic militarization to participate in the social, economic, and civil engagements. As it was mentioned here, the Doha Political Declaration of 2025, it clearly states that there won't be any social development if people are living under insecurity, displacement, and war zones. I totally agree with the conclusion of Doha Declaration. It is true, when people are living in constant fear, insecurity, and instability, Excellencies, to find the solution for social development is an illusion. People cannot participate in the economic and social and civic engagements under those conditions. I will give an example of Kashmir. Will you listen to me carefully? I come from Kashmir, but I am not saying it because I come from Kashmir. I am going to put forth the observations of those who are not Kashmiris, who are not even Muslims. Although the historical and the political dimension of Kashmir, it has been widely documented, but its social development implications, they have not. The prolonged militarization, frequent curfews, communication blockade, I don't need to tell you. Ever present the fear of nuclear confrontation between India and Pakistan. It has disrupted the lives of every single person. And compounding on the subject is the absence of the accountability of 900,000 Indian Army. Excellencies, 900,000 figure was given by one of the most notable human rights activists of India, Arundhati Roy. They are not accountable because they have been given the immunity under law, particularly Public Safety Act, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. You do not need to be an Einstein, ladies and gentlemen. Under those circumstances, you cannot pursue the social, economic, and civic engagements. The constant disturbances in Kashmir, it has fundamentally changed the lives of the children. The memories of our children, they are reshaped by insecurity and instability. Can you believe it? Our children, they do not want to go to kindergarten. Our children, they do not play with the toys the way the normal boys do. As it was mentioned by Excellency Ambassador of Pakistan, schools are closed down for longer period of time. Can you believe it? They are also being closed when there is VVIP personality in town. I will give just an example. Narendra Modi ji, the Prime Minister of India. He visited Kashmir March 7th, 2024. He gave a speech at Bakshi Stadium, which is just 5 miles from my hometown. There were thousands of people listening to him. Thousands of people. March 7, 2024. And the next day, which is March 8, 2024, reported by India Today and Delhi-based The Hindu. What did they report? They interviewed Mahbooba Mufti, the former Chief Minister of Kashmir. They interviewed Umar Abdullah, who is currently the Chief Minister of Kashmir. They told them, The Hindu and the India Today, that the government has compelled the teachers. They must bring thousands of students to listen to Narendra Modi. The schools were closed down. There are tens of thousands of Kashmiri youth who have lost either one or both parents, exposing them to the psychological trauma. The London-based Save the Children, London-based. They say the number of orphans has increased. From 1991, it was 35,000. In 2007, 80,000, not my report, Save the Children. In 2007, 80,000. Today it is more than 100,000. Now the violence against women, it has been the serious impediment for the social development in Kashmir. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a quite new terminology which I am going to use here. It has been used by the United States Department of State. It has been used by the United Nations High Commissioner of Human Rights. What is this new terminology? It is half widows. It is only in Kashmir. What does half widows means? Their husbands have not died, they have disappeared. They do not know whether they are dead or alive, forcing them to the economic hardships. Now, how many half widows are there? Let me quote State Department country report. There are 8,000 to 10,000 people who have disappeared in Kashmir, State Department report. Their wives are half widows. Because of shortage of time, I would like to give you just one example of Kunon Pushpora. Very sympathetic. Kunon Pushpora. It was reported by New York Times by Barbara Crossett. I met Barbara Crossett here in New York. In Millennium Hotel, it was not Millennium Hotel then, it was then UN Plaza Hotel, we had a meeting. She had just come from Kashmir about Kunon Pushpora. It was reported by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and the Daily Independent. What did they report? Very shameful. They reported 50 to 70 women between the ages of 13 to 60. They were gang raped. Tamanna, 18 years old lady, 18 years old, you cannot say even lady, 18 years old girl. She was pregnant. 3 days later, she gave birth to her son with broken arm. Shakila. Ladies and gentlemen, by God, I am not making a political statement here. Shakila could be my daughter. Shakila could be your sister. What happened to Shakila? Shakila was abandoned by her husband, Muslim husband. You know why? Because she gave birth to a child who was conceived by the rape of an Indian soldier. So, dear brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, if the Commission of Social Development is true to its mandate, then we suggest to the Commission, they must persuade the Government of India to allow United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Violence Against Women and United Nations Special Rapporteur on Sexual Exploitation of Children to go to Kashmir. Have an independent assessment, and report back to the United Nations Human Rights Council. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I thank Dr. Fai for highlighting the lived realities and generational impact of occupation on the lives of Kashmiris. Our last panelist is Mr. Abdul Hamid Sayam, a Palestinian journalist. Mr. Sayam, as a Palestinian journalist who has documented life under prolonged occupation, how does the daily reality of restrictions on movement, access to education, healthcare, and livelihoods translate into long-term social development deficit for occupied populations? You have the floor.
Thank you, Sister Shaima, and thank you, the Mission of Pakistan, for inviting me to be part of this distinguished panel. I'm really honored to be with all of you. The subject regarding social development under occupation is very close to my heart. Being a person who lived under occupation, my family lived under occupation, and I have first-hand experience about what's going on in Palestine. And I want to first also express my solidarity with my brothers and sisters in Kashmir. When you talk about Kashmir, you can take the name and put Palestine, and if you talk about Palestine and take it and put Kashmir, it will fit. Both issues started almost the same time. Both issues were being handled by Security Council. There are so many resolutions that had been denied, and we are facing the same thing, that is no respect for international law. I want to start with a story from Iraq. I was working with Special Envoy Sergio Vieira de Mello, and we used to visit political and religious leaders in Iraq, and we talk about human rights and development and social progress in Iraq. And we used to hear something very similar. What we need is running water, electricity, and safety in the schools. Don't talk to us about development or about human rights or about progress. That's what we need now. So you cannot talk about social development if you are under occupation. So last November in Doha, the Social Summit reaffirmed fundamental truth. Development cannot be achieved under conditions of insecurity, displacement, and occupation. Yet as we sit here, the gap between the declaration and the reality on the ground is not a crack, it is a canyon. We are not just talking about service disruption. We are witnessing the systematic dismantling of a whole society system that allows a society not to function completely. In Gaza, for example, 90% of the population has been displaced in a relentless attack. We are entering the third consecutive year without formal education for 625,000 students. This is scholastic suicide, the targeted destruction of the intellectual future of Palestine. But I will focus my talk on the occupied West Bank, where I grew up and departed, like many Palestinians, looking for education and chances for a better life. I just visited my homeland twice, in late July, early August, and in late November, early December. And I want to talk about the suffering that I have personally witnessed. What does it mean to live under occupation? It means that every aspect of your life is controlled by the occupier. Occupation forces decide for you which road to drive through, how long you will wait on the checkpoint, to go to school or not to go to school, how long you have to wait on the checkpoint, where the woman who's giving birth to her child, if she can give the birth on the checkpoint or in the emergency vehicle or in the hospital. Every village has a master gate. They can close it at any moment they want, and the village becomes a prison. In fact, all the West Bank is a big prison, divided into smaller prisons. There are over 900 checkpoints, making daily life a practice of humiliation. The 2 or 3 soldiers on the checkpoint can decide to close it for hours, just for no reason except to torture the Palestinians and humiliate them. For any reason. They need to say only he had a knife to kill. Killing Palestinian is something so easy for them. Only they have to say he's a knife, or he was coming to us and he put his hand in his pocket, and they shoot. They shoot to kill. Impunity encourages the soldiers to do it again. Not one single settler or anyone who committed a crime against Palestinians has been put on trial. I got stuck 2 hours on one near Nablus on a checkpoint and 3 hours near Calandia. Palestinians come out of their cars. They get restless when they are in a long queue of cars doing nothing, just waiting. Sometimes they went into argument. One wants to pass from here or from here, and sometimes they go into a fist fight. They're losing their patience. And that's exactly what they want to do. They want the Palestinians to lose patience with each other. And they go into some argument. Because I was telling my friend who was in the car, if you give those people who are waiting for 3 hours, give them visas to go to Gambia or Zimbabwe or wherever, they will go. Because their life is being choked day in and day out. In December alone, there was an attack, 1,600 attacks by armed forces, security forces, and the settler. Settler violence in my village destroyed a small children park that we expatriates here, we contributed to build a small park for the children of our village. They completely destroyed it. They cut 71 olive trees for my cousin and another 31 for other friend of mine and 16 for another. In a village near my village, they forcefully stole 800 sheep under the threat of a gun. They circled my village with caravans of the shape of an arc. So there is one caravan here, another caravan, another caravan. In each caravan, there is one settler or one family, and each settler has a dog and a gun and a car. So if you get closer to them, the first thing they put the gun in your head and they say, go back. So they managed to cut off the village from its land. So if the people don't have, they cannot cultivate their land, what are they going to do? Either they have to try to leave the country, or they have to become like, wait for some charity organization to help them, or they will maybe go to start to work with Israel if they allow them, and they stop that starting October 7. There is a form of another violence in the West Bank that they don't need to use bullets. Administrative erasure. In West Bank, Israel control over the Palestinian population registry means that tens of thousands of children face delays or denials. Denial of birth registration. Without a birth certificate, a child legally does not exist. No ID means no school, no vaccines, and no pathway to legal employment. I think it's in the only place on earth that in Israel, in occupied territories, Israel forced people to destroy their homes, who they say they have no license, which they don't give licenses to build, and they force you to either destroy it yourself, or they will destroy it for you and charge you like 5,000 shekel, Israeli shekel. Disability is another problem. In Gaza, for example, there 11% of the population live with disability. There is evacuation order, assume a level of mobility that simply does not exist for those who are assistive devices were buried under their homes. The term leave no one behind is a hollow promise if we refuse to name what is holding people back. The solution, we must move beyond counting number of aid trucks coming into Gaza and talk about ending occupation and enforcing peace, which is not the case, because it's the case like in Kashmir and the case in Palestine, there is a major power who is denying people to do that. The Jewish intellectual Yehovai Leibowitz warned against decades ago. He said that controlling another people would inevitably lead to moral decay and could result in a dangerous transformation of the society's very identity. Please take into account now, it is not only the army, it is not only the settler, it's the whole society is turning into a kind of brutal society. I mean, you can say like 68% who support killing children in Gaza in a very unprecedented case in modern times. This brutality is evident not only in the statement, which they said, they said this is human animals, no one is innocent in Gaza, kill children first, but also in daily behavior on the ground, in the systematic tolerance of settler violence, where Palestinians are killed, fields are burned, trees are uprooted, and villages are attacked under the protection and silence of the army. They see, now they are protecting the settler. In my village, when I was there 5 times, the army came to the village and entered forced entry into homes, And we were told they were just practicing. That's just an exercise, okay? So they go into the middle of the night, they break into the house, and they search every room, terrorize the people. And in one case, there was one woman by herself, and she living in the second floor, and she woke up to find 5 soldiers next to her bed. And imagine the kind of fear that she went through it. So, once violence is legitimized, cannot be easily controlled. And that is what happened exactly. Ben Ghafir gave the settlers 200,000 personal guns now. So every settler has now a weapon. And there is 1 million with settlers. We're not talking about just a few. Like in the 1993, when the Oslo Accord was signed, there was 150,000 settlers. Now we're talking about almost 850,000. So the life in the West Bank is completely controlled by the occupier. There is no regular classes, no regular movement. You cannot go to your job on time. You could take you hours and hours. And daily killing and daily storming and daily destruction is going on. I visited 2 refugee camps in northern Palestine, Nur Shamis and Tul Karim, and I sat with people who were uprooted. There's 32,000 of them who were uprooted and sitting in tents now. So it's a systematic destruction of the society, leading them, pushing them toward one goal: to leave the country. That is what is called, what today Ehud Olmert said. Ehud Olmert said today, it is a systematic ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian. With these conditions, my friends, my fellow attendants, that is the real question: is there still a willingness to confront the realization of that prophecy that the country is the society, the Israeli society itself is becoming brutalizing and becoming tolerant to killing the Palestinians, destroying them. So it's not an issue just with the government or with Netanyahu or with Ben Ghafir or just the Likud party. It's becoming a little bit more dangerous. It's paralyzing the Palestinian people. And the Palestinian people, they will not disappear. They have to stay in their homes and land, and they have to resist, no matter what the cost is. And everyone saw how much the people in Gaza resisted that brutal machine of the settler colonial state of Israel. Thank you very much.
I thank Abdulhamid Sam for his deeply moving personal account. We would like to thank all our distinguished panelists for their deeply moving, insightful, and substantive contributions. Your perspectives have reminded us that social development challenges faced by people living in conflict situations in occupied territories are in reality story of human resilience and untold suffering. Since we have paucity of time, we would be able to only give floor to maybe one speaker from the floor before we conclude this event with the concluding remarks. I have the honor to give floor to a permanent representative of Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Let me start by thanking the Permanent Mission of Pakistan for convening this important discussion. The underlying rationale of the relevant obligations under applicable international law is to ensure, inter alia, the survival and welfare of the civilian population affected by conflict and occupation. However, across the world, ongoing conflicts continue to have severe consequences for societies, economies, and the well-being of civilian populations. They drive mass displacement, deepen humanitarian crisis, create unprecedented social development challenges, and place immense strain on fragile economies and institutions. Millions of civilians face food insecurity, interrupted education, limited access to healthcare, and prolonged uncertainty about their future. These conditions undermine regional and global stability, erode development gains built over decades, and leave lasting social, psychological, and economic scars, particularly for children and future generations. The experience of Azerbaijan vividly demonstrates the far-reaching human and social impacts of war and occupation. The country has one of the highest per capita rates of forced displacement, with communities severely affected in terms of livelihoods, education, and healthcare. Since the end of the conflict in November 2020, Azerbaijan has launched large-scale post-conflict rehabilitation and reconstruction efforts to enable the return of over 700,000 internally displaced persons to their homes in safety and dignity. We are rebuilding entire cities and villages from scratch. Towns that were once rubble and ashes are now rising as modern settlements. Every airport, school, farm, hospital, or road we inaugurate in these territories help protect development gains and promote stability and growth. However, the return of the IDPs and reconstruction efforts are slowed down by the serious threat posed by an estimated 1.5 million landmines and unknown number of explosive remnants of war across the formerly occupied territories, which continue to maim and claim innocent lives. Another pressing humanitarian issue is the fate of more than 4,000 Azerbaijanis still missing due to the war, a powerful reminder of the enduring impacts of conflict on families and social cohesion. The tragic consequences of conflict and occupation highlight the importance of sustained national efforts to support conflict-affected populations, further contributed by international cooperation and solidarity to ensure that no one is left behind. In conclusion, we reiterate our firm commitment to the full implementation of the Doha Political Declaration of 2025, advancing social development and strengthening social justice and solidarity. I thank you.
Thank you, Azerbaijan. Now it is my honor to invite Mr. Amir Atazoi, Council Journal of Pakistan, to deliver the concluding remarks. You have the floor.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude today's important decision, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all speakers, panelists, and participants for their thoughtful contributions. The insights shared this afternoon have reinforced a fundamental reality: that sustainable social development cannot take roots where people continue to live under the conditions of conflict, instability, and foreign occupation. Ladies and gentlemen, today's deliberations have reminded us that social development is not merely a technical or economic exercise. It is at its core a moral and political responsibility. When communities are deprived of their basic freedoms, when access to education, healthcare, livelihoods, and social protection is systematically restricted, development loses its meaning. In such circumstances, the promise of dignity and equality remains unfulfilled. As we mark Kashmir's Solidarity Day today, Pakistan recalls the plight of the people of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, who have endured decades of repression, human rights violations, and denial of their fundamental rights. The situation in occupied Kashmir is not only a political dispute, ladies and gentlemen, which is on the international agenda. It is a human tragedy with profound social consequences. Fractured families, disrupted education, economic marginalization, and deep psychological trauma affecting generations after generations. The voices we heard today from different regions and lived experiences have underscored a common truth. Communities living under occupation and prolonged conflicts are pushed to the margins of development. Women, children, youth, persons with disabilities, and the elderly bear a disproportionate burden, often with limited visibility and insufficient international responses. Leaving such populations behind weakens the credibility of our collective global communities. Ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan firmly believes that social justice and development cannot be separated from the respect for international law and human rights. Durable progress requires addressing the root causes, ensuring accountability, and upholding the right of peoples under foreign occupation to self-determination, as enshrined in the relevant United Nations resolutions. Ladies and gentlemen, at the same time, today's discussions have also highlighted resilience, the capacity of affected communities to endure, adapt, and aspire for a better future despite immense hardships. This resilience must be matched by sustained international solidarity, meaningful humanitarian access, and development support that reaches those most in need without discrimination or political selectivity. Pakistan remains committed to advocating for a just and peaceful resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute in accordance with the will of the Kashmiri people and the resolutions of the United Nations Security Council. We will continue to raise our voice for those whose voices are silenced, and to work with partners to ensure that social development efforts truly serve the most vulnerable. Ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I would like to reiterate that the principles of leaving no one behind must not remain just a slogan. It must guide our policies, shape our priorities, and inform our collective action, especially for those living under occupation and conflict. Only then we can claim to advance social development with integrity and purpose. I would like to acknowledge the presence of the members of our Kashmiri community with us today, sitting here. Many of you carry not only the memory of your motherland, but also the lived reality of separation, loss, prolonged uncertainty, and much more. Families have been divided, livelihoods have been disrupted, and generations have grown up amid restrictions that no society should be accepting as normal. Despite all this, the Kashmiri people have demonstrated remarkable resilience and dignity, preserving their identity, culture, and peaceful aspirations. Your presence here today is a powerful reminder that this issue is not abstract. It affects real lives, real families, and real futures. In the end, I thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for participation and your engagement, and I hope that today's exchanges will contribute to sustained attention and concrete action in the days ahead. I thank you all.
Thank you so much, Consul General of Pakistan, for the concluding remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we come to the end of this event. On behalf of Permanent Mission of Pakistan and Consulate General, we thank you for your presence and for your participation. Thank you.